Good day, poker peeps. This is Sky with Smart Poker Study, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to filter in your PokerTracker 4 database for float bets, probe bets, and the opportunities to make both of those. So this video is a companion piece to podcast episode number 360, which you can check out by going to smartpokerstudy.com/pod360. In that episode, I give you all the details on when you should be making floats and probes in order to win pots by bluffing your opponent off of it post-flop, on the flop, or the turn. So check out that episode, link down below in the description, or just type it in, of course. But in case you don't know what a float is, a float, as defined by PokerTracker 4, is an in-position bet when the pre-flop raiser checks instead of c-betting. And we'll look at a couple example hands of that in just a sec. The two filters that I recommend that you do today during your study session. The first is float flop. Of course, you can look at turn or rivers as well, but we're just going to concentrate on the flop. Go to more filters right here. Actions and opportunities. Flop opportunity. And a float is a type of bet. So go to flop bets and then click on float. Turn it on, got the check mark, add that to filter, made the bet on the flop a float bet, save and apply filters. So you can see in this database, negative dollars, but that's because we got a few different stakes right here, but we're positive in win rate, positive 457 big blinds per 100 hands, pretty darn lovely. But I do have one hand I want to look at, this Queen Jack offsuit, where we lost a decent amount of big blinds here, more than decent, I guess, at 5 NL. So we have an open raise from this player, and then we called. Now, when you call a bet in position against the open raiser, which he's in the small blind, of course, that sets up the opportunity to potentially make the float bet if they check on the flop, right? So we're going to see the flop, ace, ace-6 right here. We've got a check by villain. Great opportunity to float, right? Villain could easily check his pocket 10s, his king jack, his pocket 4s right here, his 9-8 suited. Tons of stuff that missed the ace-ace-6 board. So he checks, and we decide to make the float bet. Awesome, right? This is a great play. If he does not like that board, he's going to be folding. Oh, dagnabbit, he calls us, right? So that's a bummer. Now, if we think about this board, ace-ace, well, this bet, first off, we don't have much of a hand at all. Queen high, backdoor straight, backdoor weak flush on a paired board. We're not liking the fact that he called, right? But this was a total bluff. We made it with the intent of getting him to fold. He didn't fold, so we have to ask ourselves, okay, I like the float bet, but he called. What does that mean? It means that he's not scared of two aces on the flop. He could easily have an ace with a weak kicker. He could have a couple of clubs. He could be the kind of player that wants to check call one street, even though he looks pretty tight aggressive, right? Check call on one street just to see what we do. If we check behind the turn, maybe he can bluff on the river. But the big thing here, I think, on such a scary board, when we made more than a half pot bet, man, he's got to have an ace at this point. The 9 comes. Well, he wasn't scared on the ace-ace-6. Is that 9 going to scare him off the board right now? I don't think so. So I don't think this is a good double barrel that should have been made. This is a check behind right here. That 9 doesn't help you one bit, and it doesn't help villain to fold. If he's not folding on the ace-ace, he's not folding on the 9. So I think this is an ineffectual double barrel. Now that river comes in 8, oh crap. If he had a flush draw, well, he just hit it. He's not going to be folding now at this point, because the only way we can win this pot probably is to make a bluff. Now, if he had a random ace, ace-5, ace-10, is he going to be folding on this? No, not at all. So this is not a good opportunity to triple barrel. We went 2/3 pot right here. Of course, he calls, and he ends up having that ace-10 hand, which makes perfect sense the way he played it, all the way to that river. You think about it. A straight just got there. The flush got there. Of course, he's just going to check call. He's going to let you bet and triple barrel. So a good flop, float bluff, but the turn and river, not so much. Would have much rather saved that money. So that's what we're doing as we're reviewing these hands. We're looking for, were our attempts, our bluffing attempts, were they positive EV good plays to make, or were they negative EV plays that cost us money? So that's the first filter, float on the flop. Now the second one is the opportunity to float, and we did not make the float bet. So we want to see all the spots where we failed to float for whatever reason. So now that we already have this filter, let's just add to it. Go to more filters, select the filter and hit not. So we're going to see all the hands where we did not float on the flop. Let's add it though. We want to see the actions and opportunities on the flop opportunity, where we had the opportunity to float right now. So if we think about this, like that prior hand with that queen jack, if he had checked on the ace-6 board and we checked behind, that's the kind of hand that will pop up now. We failed to float given the chance to do so. And then look at that, 35 times we failed to float, but we have a positive win rate. That's good, right? That's not the end of the world, of course. As long as we're positive, that's what matters. But we could probably find quite a few instances here where we missed out on a good floating opportunity. So if we look at this here, we got this Jack 10 suited on a queen high, kind of a hard to hit, ugly board, right? And plus, we got the gut shot. Let's see what happens. Raise from the cutoff, and then our call right here. So this sets us up for a possible floating opportunity if our opponent chooses to check on the flop. Fold and a call. Okay, well, we're three-way, but we are in position. Hey, we flop a gut shot. One of the reasons why you call with hands like this pre-flop is so that you can hit that draw, but then still potentially play it aggressively in order to get your opponents to fold. If they don't fold, you might hit your straight or whatever draw that you have. Check and a check. I'm loving this. Look at that hard to hit board. 6-7 has an open ender, but really that's the best draw. No flush draws possible. One big card here. If they have a couple of broadways, they could easily be folding at this instance. I really love the opportunity, I love the opportunity to float bluff here. One thing that we want to look at is our opponent, the player who's capable of c-betting. He chose not to. His c-bet is only 67%. So he does bluff quite often, but why isn't he betting on this board right here? We can also take a look at his out of position fold to float. Oh man, he folds 100% of the time. It is only 1 out of 1, but he's shown a tendency right now, and he's out of position. He didn't c-bet. He really should have c-betted. Just imagine if he had ace-queen. Ace-king is often going to c-bet as a bluff. Aces, kings, queens, those are all going to c-bet for value right here. He didn't c-bet. He's showing weakness. I think we missed a really good opportunity to bluff him off the pot. Now the 3 hits. Oh, now he's taking a stab at it. Nice. He's making a probe bet, which we'll dive into in the next segment right here. But he's making a probe, gets a call, and then obviously we're not getting the right price to just call on a gut shot, so we exit the hand. But here's the interesting thing. Now, who knows what could have happened if we did float on the flop? But that river comes a 9. Sure, it is 3 spades, but we just completed our gut shot. What if action had been different? What if we had floated right here and one of these 2 players called? As soon as they call on that 3 of spades, kind of a non-eventful card, they both would have checked. We could have easily just checked behind instead of having to fold. We could hit our 9 on the river for a straight. Now, it depends on what your opponents are going to do at this point, but we just got to see a free river 9 after floating on the flop. It would have been such a better play, especially given as he folds a lot. Remember that 100% right here. And plus, he's out of position against us. Really good floating opportunity that we missed out on. With a potential river with a river value opportunity. Now, the other play that's related to floating, it's probing. Now, this is an out of position bet on the next street after the pre-flop raiser checks behind on the prior street. So same situation, but the c-better checked and we're out of position. The first filter you want to run is probe on the turn or the river, but we're looking at turn today. So let's clear the filters. More filters. Actions and opportunities. On the turn, of course, a probe is a type of bet, so turn bets, and then highlight or turn on the probe. Save and apply the filters. So we're going to see all the hands where we probed. Hey, lovely, 20 times probing out of position after the c-better checks on the prior street, and we're positive 394. Things are looking good when we're probing, but there is one hand I want to look at right here in the big blind, King 10 offsuit. Open raise on the button. We got King 10, totally worth calling, especially if we realize that we can use some plays against our opponent post-flop. Let's get rid of these so we just don't have to look at them. They don't cloud our vision right here. Before we make our call, we're up against a tight aggressive player who c-bets 64% of the time. Let's take a look at his c-betting stats in position versus out of position. Interesting. 60% on the flop. He's a little bit more honest when on the flop right here. Now, he folds to probes on the turn and river 50%. This is a good player to call right now. We're going to hope that he checks behind on the flop. He is in position. He does c-bet only 60%. Out of position, he c-bets a little bit more frequently. We're hoping with our call, if we miss the board, he's going to check behind, and then we can fire on that turn. One good thing, too, look how his c-bet on flop to turn drops big time. This guy is a turn-honest c-better, just in general, turn-honest c-better when c-betting. He's also a turn-honest player when facing a c-bet. He only folds 11, but 75 on the turn. He's a turn-honest player in general, so a turn probe has a high likelihood of working. We call. We don't flop anything. Oh, it is an ace-high flop, though. You would imagine if this player had ace-king, ace-queen, ace-jack, any ace, he would bet for value right now. He checked behind. Awesome. Probing opportunity. The 8 doesn't really change anything. It's probably not going to give him a pair. He's not going to be happy on this 8. We probe, and he folds. Everything set us up perfectly from pre-flop all the way to the turn right here for a really good bluff probe bet. Now, the other hands that I like to look at, of course, just like when floating, I like to look at the opportunities to probe, but we did not. So more filters. Select not right here. Add to the filter, actions and opportunities on the turn. We had the opportunity to probe bet, but we failed to probe. Let's review these. 96 hands. Hey, nice. Even when we don't probe, we're still making money. That's a good sign right there. But let's take a look at one specific hand in the small blind. There is a hand with pocket fives right down here. Well, before... clicked on the wrong one. I apologize. Little pause. Okay, so pocket fives. Let's take a look at the action real quick. We got pocket fives on an 8-6-9 board. Well, on that flop, we flopped a gut shot. It's an under gutter, but still decent. We checked twice and then check fold on that river. Man, this could have been a good opportunity. Before even reviewing the action, seeing our opponent, good opportunity to probe, given that there were 2 checks in a row by our in-position opponent. A check from the big blind poster. We get a small raise right there. We decide to call to set mine. Fold into fold. Great. We're heads up. The fact that we call from out of position, we have now set up a possible probe turn opportunity, right? Now, one of the things generally, before you call, of course, we're going to call to set mine no matter what. His stack is big enough, plenty of money-making potential here. It would be a great thing if he had more stats for us to dive into, take a look at his c-betting tendencies, his fold to turn probe, all that kind of stuff, right? But we don't know much about this player. But what do we know? Think about this for just a sec. Look at this kind of player. What do we know? 19 hands, hasn't played a single hand yet. Probably a really tight player. But look at that weird ISO raise sizing. Would he do this with a really strong hand? I mean, if you had aces or kings here, would you really make it just 2.5 big blinds and allow all these players, especially the big blind and this guy, to come in super cheap? Probably not. So he's probably a tight player, but he probably has a hand that he's not really too fond of. Ace, jack, pocket 10, something like that. So we decide to call. We're heads up. Now, we check. He checks behind. You gotta love that, right? He's a tight player, probably doesn't have a very strong hand, sees that scary board. We are prime to probe this turn and win the pot. Now the queen comes. You could expect him to check behind on the flop with plenty of ace highs, plenty of king highs, but because he's kind of a tight player, what kind of queens does he have in his hand? Well, on the flop, that is, right? Maybe ace queen, maybe king queen, maybe queen jack, but he's a pretty tight player. It's his first open raise and it's small. I think queen jack is probably the worst queen, other than king queen and ace queen that he has in his range right now. But he has plenty of ace high, king high, um, uh, uh, ace high and king high hands that are folding on this board. So I think, or on this card, I think this is a really good opportunity to probe just for 3.5, maybe 4 big blinds, half pot or slightly bigger right here. One street opportunity to bluff. If he calls, we might still hit a river 7 and be able to make a straight and potentially bet or check call for value, depending on what the action is. But we fail. We miss our opportunity to bluff. He checks behind. Well, he didn't have a queen, right? He probably has an ace or a king that we could have gotten him to fold on that turn. But the ace hits. Oh, crap. We let him catch his free draw. The diamonds just got there. If he had king 10 of diamonds, he got there. I mean, there's so much. We check. He bets. We fold. I think this is a really good, a good missed opportunity, right? Like, we missed that turn probe bet. So what I recommend that you do right now, my challenge to you, is to spend the next 20 minutes in PokerTracker 4. Run these filters for yourself. Review some hands where you made the probe, you made the float, and see if you can find any mistakes. Take note of those mistakes in your journal. Also review hands where you had the opportunity to probe and float and you didn't do it. Find those mistakes, take note of them, and work in the future to not repeat those mistakes to make better plays next time. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later.